Most people cling to the phrase, "I'm enough," like it's armor. They use it to soothe themselves, to silence the voice that demands more, to justify the comfort zone that cages them. But for the Sigma male, those words never leave his mouth. Not because he's insecure, not because he's ungrateful, but because he knows the brutal truth. The moment you believe you're enough, you've already surrendered. The Sigma doesn't measure himself by the world's applause or its cheap motivational slogans. He doesn't wake up to feel complete. He wakes up hungry, restless, obsessed. He knows that enough is the language of stagnation, the vocabulary of men who'd rather numb themselves than face the grind of evolution. The Sigma's life isn't about reaching a finish line. It's about refusing to run the wrong race. He doesn't beg to be validated as enough. He builds until the world has no choice but to admit he is more than it expected. And that's what separates him. That's what makes him dangerous. Let's break down 10 truths about why Sigma males never say, "I'm enough," and what that refusal reveals about their DNA. 1. Enough is the language of surrender. When a man says he's enough, what he's really saying is, "I'm done fighting." The Sigma refuses to crown himself enough because he sees what the phrase really means. It's not self-love, it's resignation. It's a trick that society sells to keep people docile, to stop them from asking for more, building more, demanding more of themselves. For the Sigma, enough is the coffin lid slammed too early. The world is full of men who convinced themselves they were enough and then spent the rest of their lives rotting in mediocrity. He would rather bleed in the pursuit of growth than settle into that trap. When he refuses the phrase, it isn't because he hates himself. It's because he knows his potential is not negotiable. He isn't chasing perfection. He's chasing evolution. 2. The crowd uses enough as a sedative. Comfort is the most addictive drug, and "I'm enough" is how they sell it. The Sigma watches how the crowd uses "I'm enough." They post it under filtered selfies. They whisper it to themselves when their ambitions collapse. They use it as a shield against criticism, not to build resilience, but to avoid responsibility. He sees through it. He knows that the phrase isn't empowerment, it's sedation. It's how people soothe their unfulfilled dreams, how they explain away wasted years. That's why he never repeats it. He refuses to be tranquilized by cheap affirmations. His fire isn't meant to be tamed. His hunger isn't meant to be anesthetized. While others chant enough to stay asleep, he stays awake. 3. The Sigma measures himself by growth, not contentment. If today is enough, then tomorrow dies before it's born. Most men treat life like a box to be checked. Job? Enough. Partner? Enough. Status? Enough. And then they stop climbing. They stop building. The Sigma doesn't see life that way. For him, every win is just a foundation for the next. Not because he's ungrateful, but because gratitude doesn't mean stagnation. It means using today's blessings to build tomorrow's empire. He isn't interested in being enough. He's interested in being more sharper, harder, freer. Where others measure contentment, he measures momentum. And that's why he leaves them behind. 4. Saying "I'm enough" is just another mask. Honesty doesn't need slogans. The Sigma doesn't wear masks. He knows that "I'm enough" is nothing more than theater a costume line the insecure repeat until they fool themselves into believing it. When the crowd says it, they're not declaring strength, they're begging for validation. They slap it on selfies, sprinkle it into captions, chant it in circles hoping someone claps loud enough to drown their doubt. But the Sigma doesn't step on that stage. He refuses to act in that cheap play. He doesn't need to scream his worth into the void. He proves it without a word. He understands that men who constantly announce their value are usually the ones most terrified they have none. True strength doesn't market itself. It doesn't audition for applause. It simply exists undeniable, unshaken, and impossible to counterfeit. 5. Legacy demands more than enough. No man was remembered because he decided he was enough. The Sigma thinks in terms of echoes, not applause. He doesn't waste energy chasing claps that fade in minutes. He's obsessed with carving something that still rattles the walls long after he's gone. He knows that no man ever etched his name into history by saying, "I'm enough." That phrase is how men vanish quietly, erased before they even began. Enough is the vocabulary of the forgotten. Legacy is the language of the relentless, and the Sigma refuses to be forgotten. That's why he builds when others rest, why he sharpens himself past comfort when others soften. Because he knows survival is the bare minimum, and bare minimum never leaves a mark. He's not here to merely exist. He's obsessed with creating something that breathes without him, a force that outlives his body. He understands that enough doesn't just kill ambition, it murders legacy before it ever draws breath. 6. The world respects what it can't seduce. The man who says he's enough is already owned. Society wants compliant men, men who chase comfort, who spend their lives consuming, who whisper, "I'm enough," while they quietly give up. But the Sigma breaks that script. He isn't seduced by comfort. He doesn't stop when the world tells him he's done. He never says enough because he refuses to let the system put chains on his ambition. That resistance makes people uneasy. They can't predict him. They can't market to him. They can't tame him. And what can't be seduced always earns respect, even from those who secretly resent it. 7. Silence speaks louder than affirmations. The strongest man doesn't say he's enough. He just lives like it. The Sigma doesn't waste breath on empty affirmations. He knows words without proof are just noise. While others chant, "I'm enough," into mirrors like addicts begging for a fix, he lets his silence crush the room. His results scream louder than any slogan. His resilience is carved into his scars. His solitude is proof he needs no audience to validate his worth. By refusing to recite hollow mantras, he reveals their fraud. He doesn't need to trick himself with borrowed words. He already knows who he is. And more importantly, he's building who he will become. That kind of silence isn't absence, it's dominance. It terrifies the crowd because they can dismiss slogans, but they can't dismiss results that speak louder than their entire vocabulary. 8. Comfort zones breed weakness. Enough is the soft pillow where men go to die quietly. The Sigma knows that every comfort zone is nothing but a padded coffin. And "I'm enough" isn't empowerment, it's the lullaby that lulls men into slow decay while convincing them they're safe. He treats it like poison. He doesn't care if it feels warm, familiar, or celebrated by the crowd. He knows the second he whispers it, he begins to rot from the inside out. That's why he spits it out instead of repeating it. He'd rather stay sharp, raw, restless, even scarred than die quietly wrapped in soft, suffocating chains that look like comfort but feel like death. 9. Gratitude and hunger can coexist. Being thankful doesn't mean being finished. The Sigma understands something the crowd doesn't. You can be grateful and still want more. You can love the present and still demand a bigger future. People mistake his refusal to say, "I'm enough," as ingratitude. But it's the opposite. He's grateful enough to not waste the gift of his life in stagnation. To him, real gratitude is growth. Real gratitude is refusing to bury potential. Real gratitude is never saying enough when there's still another mountain to climb. 10. Enough is for the many, more is for the few. The crowd comforts itself with enough. The rare few demand more. The Sigma knows the truth. Most men will never rise because they convinced themselves they already had. Enough became their lullaby, and they died with potential still burning inside them. But he refuses to join them. He doesn't repeat their slogans. He doesn't borrow their masks. He doesn't share their sedatives. He stands alone, restless, hungry, never enough, not because he hates himself, but because he refuses to stop becoming. On a final note, he didn't whisper, "I'm enough." He lived like he was more. The Sigma male isn't interested in cheap affirmations or applause. He doesn't need to trick himself into believing he's worthy. He proves it every day, in silence, in solitude, in the relentless pursuit of more. The crowd thinks "I'm enough" is freedom, but for the Sigma, it's chains. And that's why he'll never say it. Because his life isn't about being enough, it's about becoming unforgettable.